Welcome to another edition of Sports NOLA TV, where we examine everything in the world of sports, especially dealing with pro football, college football, high school football, and of course more along the lines, a hot seat segment as well. So much to delve into. It's great to have you with us. A pleasant good evening to you. I'm Ken Trahan of sportsNOLA.com, best site on the web. And of course we got the best panel of people to talk about all these elements that I just mentioned, and we start with sports journalist Amy Jones. Amy, it's always a pleasure. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
And same back to you. And I tell you what, a Monday where we're talking about LSU and the Saints winning, this will be one to enjoy.
And incidentally, while I have the opportunity, happy birthday in advance. I'm not disclosing the fact that you're more than 21.
That's
but
it.
I am wishing you a happy birthday nonetheless.
I appreciate it. Thank you
You
very
deserve
much.
it, and I hope you enjoy it immensely.
Thank you. Thank you. I
Gentleman who
appreciate
hopes he never has another birthday is Brian Alley Walsh of sportsNOLA.com, because he's way past the 21 mark. Brian, good evening to you.
Way past the 20. Well, I think we should sing happy birthday to Amy today. Ricky, why don't you go ahead? Oh, that was that Hall of Fame laugh right there. Well, happy birthday.
Thank
happy
you. I
birthday.
appreciate it. I appreciate
and
it.
real quick.
Yes.
Great win. Great win from the Saints and from LSU. We haven't been able to say that recently, and so good wins.
Really good weekend, and of course, also here to talk about it, the Hall of Famer himself, our good friend, 57, Ricky Jackson. Ricky, good evening.
Well, thank you, Ken. Happy birthday, Amy. And I'll tell you what, man, I seen some great football this weekend. I went to the Bayou Classic, had a suite there, and had a lot of my friends that look at the Bayou Classic. They put on a great show, Southern and Grambling. So then to see the Saints come back and top it off, and LSU. So we just had great football this week in Louisiana.
What was great this year, Ricky, was the fact that the football game matched the pageantry. It was a great game.
It was a great game. I mean, to have 58,000 people to show up for that game, I mean, it was great. I mean, last year I went, it was like 32,000. I was like, man, I'm not going back the following year, but they told me that they did a lot of changes and stuff, so I went back, and the changes was great. And they won 52 to 40 something, so I mean, it was a great game all the way to the end.
You know what the biggest changes were? Both teams were winning football teams coming in.
That makes
If you
sense.
win, they will come. It's that simple. When we return in just a moment, we'll talk about a win by the New Orleans Saints as Sports NOLA TV continues. Statistics are for losers. What can I tell you? Because those yards were really a lie in the sense that many of them came in the fourth quarter when the Steelers scored 19 points after they trailed by a large margin. Still, an accomplishment to give up 538 yards and win the game. Ken Trahan, Sports NOLA TV, the New Orleans Saints, a 35-32 winner at Heinz Field over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Drew Brees had a very efficient game, 19 of 27, 4 drops, by the way. 257 yards, 5 touchdowns. The most important stat isn't on there, no turnovers. And of course, Cameron Jordan emerged. Where has he been all year? Well, he looked like the guy we saw last year. He was all over the field. 6 tackles, a sack, had the great interception that he tipped to himself, made a play. And when you have him playing that way and Junior Gillette continuing to play the way he's playing, now all of a sudden, that front four for the Saints, or front three as it were, depending on the alignment, looks awfully good. And that certainly was the case against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, no one really saw this coming except maybe Ricky Jackson, who picked the Saints, as he typically does. But that said, Amy, when you look at the way, as Ricky smiles, this was a performance by the Saints where they really did the things that we kind of thought they'd do at the start of the season. This is the team we thought we'd see, right?
Well, the only other time we've really seen this team play like this is when they played Green Bay, and yet they come out a little bit of a slow start, but then they put things together, and really, that's the most dominant 35-32 score that you're ever going to see. The score doesn't tell the story of the game. As you said, a lot of that trash yards and touchdowns after the game was already put away. But the Saints, Drew Brees, very effective. You didn't see the drop balls that we had seen. There were a couple throughout the game, but not the pervasive ball on the ground the way we'd seen coming into this game. Ingram effective, and really, I think something that people haven't talked about is the Saints effective in cold weather outside.
Yeah, they got a break with the weather. It wasn't as cold as it could have been, fortunately, but you're right. They have not been good outside and not been good when it's been a little bit cool or cold, and they were on this day. Brian, as she alluded to, Mark Ingram had a good game, his fourth 100-yard rushing game of the season. Balance personified in this game, 50-50 split between run-pass, and that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, and they have the recipe for success on the road. You protect the football, you run the football, and though they didn't necessarily stop the run, they did a great job inside the red zone and held them to field goals when it could have gotten out of hand early. So really a must win and a good win, and like Amy said, the 35-32 doesn't tell the whole story to this game, but overall, they needed it and they got it.
Ricky, sign of a good team, the Steelers clearly focused on Jimmy Graham. They did not let him even see the football, not even targeted, and yet Drew Brees finds 9 different receivers, 5 different ones for touchdowns, and when that happens, somebody else has to step up. That's what Kenny Stills did for a second consecutive week.
Yeah, and I tell you what, man, it's glad to see the young guys playing good on the outside. And I've seen Toon made some plays yesterday, still made a lot of great plays. He used the speed downfield, and you can see that Ike Taylor was too slow to stay with him. I mean, the young boy can run, and all he did was run, take off, and they couldn't keep up with him. So Drew Brees got a weapon. They got a deep threat there.
Well, the Kenny Stills statistics have been simply outstanding as you look at what he's been able to do. Most recently, he had a career-high 8 catches against the Ravens on Monday Night Football. Follow that up with a career-high in yardage against the Steelers, Brian, 162 yards. He was outstanding.
And Kenny, you know what? They've needed him to step up and give them a consistent vertical threat downfield, and he's provided that. He's helping do it, and they need that to continue in the month of December to get him in the postseason.
Yeah, really good job on his part and a good job by Drew Brees not to force the ball. I can't think of one instance where he forced the ball in this game. There wasn't even anything close resembling an interception in this game, and obviously that's a change from what we've seen in recent times. The other story here, turnovers. The Saints came up with a couple. They got a couple of interceptions and did not turn the ball over. And Amy, here's some great numbers on the Saints since Sean Payton took over in 2006. When they are +2 or greater, they're 23-2, +1, 23-2. Look at this, when they're even in turnovers, they're 23-8. They're just better than the opponent, and the stat is overwhelming when they at least are even in the turnover ratio. Look at -1, they're still about 500. So obviously when they win the turnover battle, as they did in Pittsburgh, they're going to win the game.
Well, and more importantly than that, looking at this, the turnovers that we saw yesterday, there should have been a few more. We actually were talking about that off air before the show started, but there were several drop passes by the defensive backs that could have been an even higher turnover ratio for the Saints. Now, I tell you, though, one question I want to pose, if you don't mind, kind of going in there, you talked about the Graham not targeted. Do you think that becomes the Saints' recipe going down the rest of the stretch, that, Brees spreading the ball around the way that he did was a much more effective offense than trying to laser target Jimmy Graham over and over again?
Well, I would say no, Amy, because this was a game plan that Pittsburgh had built to trying to, make others beat them. And they were wrong in doing so. I mean, they did a good job against Jimmy Graham. But in doing so, that opens up the field for these other guys. When you pay Peter to, rob Peter to pay Paul, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing, and that's what happened yesterday. But, the 2 turnovers is important. But what I think is even more important than that is that they cashed in and converted each of those 2 turnovers.
14 points off turnovers.
Yeah, there was a sudden change, and then Vaccaro intercepts in the end zone. They turn and drive 80 yards. They converted Jordan's into an easy touchdown. So that was important.
Yeah, it really did change the way things were played. And if truth be told, Ricky, they should have had a lot more turnovers. They dropped as many as 4 other interceptions in this game.
Well, I tell you, again, I seen Patrick Robinson. He at least dropped 3 or 4 himself. I mean, one, the quick out, that was a straight out touchdown, and he dropped out. Those are the one that you get later. We won the ball game, so it come out there that you didn't need them. But you got something in the pocket, so he got something in the pocket for the next couple games.
Well, it's really interesting because now when you look at the Saints, they've suddenly flipped the script, because they've always been known as a great home team and not very good on the road, and Amy, that's changed now. Saints, of course, got swept at home in that recent 3-game homestand. You look at the home record versus the away record, how about that? They've now won 2 straight on the road, and that seems to be their panacea, at least at this point in time.
Well, whatever it is and however they get the wins, we'll take it. But that being said, not being able to win at home, that can't go these last few games as we head down the stretch. You're looking at a stretch of games that you're not playing any winning teams. So regardless if it's at home or if it's on the road, you're in the position to win the division. Put it away. Regardless of where it is, play like you did yesterday, win the division, go to the playoffs, and make some noise.
You know, I'd like to think that you talk about they do control their destiny at this point. The Saints, so does Atlanta for that matter. I like the Saints' chances, but seriously, I'm still not a firm believer, okay, that they have turned the corner. They need to win these 2 home games and win 1 or 2 on the road, and I think they'll take care of business. By that I mean they're going to beat Atlanta, and Kenny, we talked about they've got to beat Atlanta. That's almost paramount to them winning the division. So they go 3 or 4 here, I think they'll win the division.
Well, I mean, even this weekend, we wasn't looking for Atlanta to beat Arizona.
No, I know. No
so
way.
Atlanta stole one too, just like this. You know, a lot of people want
Yeah.
to say the Saints stole one from Pittsburgh. Atlanta stole a good game too. Now,
Absolutely.
I mean, putting Tampa and Carolina and where they're supposed to be at, they're not playing great football right now.
Well, I don't know. You say they stole that game, but I don't think anybody thinks Arizona's playing at their peak. I mean, Drew Stanton, I think, is going to be a very good NFL quarterback, but he's trying to get his foot
Well,
in.
they say he stole because of the record. You know,
Yeah.
they got the best
I
record.
hear
So, you know, when you have a record like that, you think that the defense going to play enough to beat Atlanta, but they didn't.
Well, so often, Brian, it's all about when you play people. The timing is everything, and Atlanta caught Arizona at the right time. The Saints have so often been on the wrong side of that ledger, largely because of an unfavorable schedule where the other team has had more time to prepare.
And Kenny, you know what? I mean, to me, the Steelers looked like the Saints did against Cincinnati. They looked like they weren't interested or inspired to play football. And I wonder, sometimes it's good to keep playing, okay? They had the week off prior to the Saints game. The Bears are going to have a 10-day break before they host the Saints.
Doesn't everyone?
I know.
It's incredible.
It seems like every week the team's got a mini week or a mini bye or a full bye before they play the Saints. So we'll see.
But I tell you what, Pittsburgh wasn't that good. And the quarterback, he stunk yesterday.
Yeah, I
a
agree.
lot of people don't want to say it, but Ben was on target yesterday, and he was playing like he played when he threw the 6 touchdowns each one of the game. I mean, it would have been tougher for the Saints yesterday, but he played terrible yesterday.
He did.
Yeah, there are no excuses. Roethlisberger hit his hand on Curtis Lofton's shoulder pad early in the game, and maybe that bothered him a little bit. It's part of the game. He seemed to shake it off. Certainly played well in the 4th quarter, and I guess that's the only negative, Amy. You like to finish a little bit better than the Saints finished in this game.
Yeah, certainly I think by that point they were ready to just phone it in and look at it that it was a win, whatever it may be. But really, you're right. When they had them down 24, put them away. Put your foot on the neck, if you will, that proverbial saying, and just close it out. And that just didn't seem to be the case. But regardless, a win is a win. And even if the Saints had gone ahead and phoned it in those last, 2-3 minutes when they scored those 14 points, that, we'll take it however we get it right now.
You win by 3, you win by 30, doesn't matter. You win. And as always, sportsNOLAtv would like to salute our good and great friends at Premier Automotive. sportsNOLAtv presented by Premier Automotive. We'd like to thank Troy Duhan and the entire Premier Automotive Group family for supporting the community and for being a part of what will be a terrific and exciting football season. Visit a Premier Automotive dealer near you or check out our great deals online at premierautomotive.com and let Premier take care of all of your family's automotive needs. We'll take a trip around the NFL when sportsNOLAtv continues in just a moment on WHNO TV 20. Well, some remarkable results, some one-sided games, and some very good games as well. around the league as we get deeper into the season and start to sort things out as to who the real contenders are, separating them from the pretenders. Amy, as you looked at the card, what impressed you the most?
Definitely the way that Philadelphia played against Dallas. I thought that was very impressive. I thought that Green Bay game with New England, that was a great football game down to the wire. But I'm going to tell you, this week, I might get into it a little bit more as the show goes on, but one thing that I found interesting, aside from everything that was happening on the field, is all the rumors that were happening off the field, which seemed to be dominating the conversation as much as any particular play that happened during game time.
Brian, what impressed you?
A couple of games. The Cleveland-Buffalo game, okay, Buffalo taking care of Cleveland, and now we've got this quarterback controversy with Hoyer and Johnny Football.
And Hoyer can't understand why.
Yeah.
When he's only completing 51%
Right, I mean,
of his passes on a good football team, it just begs out for a better quarterback play. If you get it, how good can they be?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the AFC North, suddenly it looks a little vulnerable. I think we saw Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh may be the worst team in that division, if you ask me, as we go forward here. And then I'm going to throw some kudos at Atlanta. They probably, well, I know they did, that they played their best game of the season. And I say that. They killed Tampa Bay earlier, but they beat a quality football team. And as Amy alluded to, Drew Stanton, I think Arizona's going to struggle. I think Seattle's eventually going to overtake them and win the West. But that was a quality win for Atlanta at a time when they knew what they had to do. They saw New Orleans. They knew that if order for them to stay on top or stay even, they had to win. They had to beat a pretty good football team to do it, and they did it.
Well, I'll tell you what, two teams really impressed me. I mean, looking at St. Louis, the way St. Louis played yesterday, they put a lot of stuff together, man. They're going to be coming down the stretch pretty tough. And just to see the world champ go out and beat Seattle to beat San Francisco the way they did, 19-3, that lets you know that they starting to play ball. They're getting all their weapons back on defense, and they're going to hard to beat at home. So if they get home field advantage, they're going to be hard to beat. Richard Sherman and that secondary playing great football. And I mean, quarterback don't make a whole lot of mistakes. That's one thing I like about the guy. He's not one of the guys going to put up a whole lot of numbers, but he's not going to lose the ball game. So you got to watch Seattle.
Seattle's real. They're playing like it again, and they got a big game this week at Philadelphia. That ought to be a huge game to watch. And you talk about intriguing, trying to decide who's really good. The other two that I would mention certainly are San Diego winning at Baltimore, coming from behind to do so in dramatic fashion in a high-scoring game. Hard to score like that on the Ravens, and they did. Phillip Rivers had a really good game, and that showed some mettle for the San Diego Chargers to do that across country. And then, of course, the other one was the Jacksonville Jaguars getting a win. Doesn't happen very often. I know it was only the Giants, but they came back to win, and I said it in the preseason, I'll say it again. If Blake Bortles gets any supporting cast, that kid's going to be the real deal. He's got what you are looking for. Poised, big, strong, can throw all the routes, and the consummate pro-style quarterback need to surround him with some players, and maybe you'll have an Andrew Luck situation like we've seen in Indianapolis. As we take a look at the NFC South, not just the records, but also the remaining schedules. Saints and Falcons tied for first. Panthers a game and a half back, and Tampa Bay now 3 back. And as we look at that, Amy, and check out the remaining games, to me it's pretty clear that the Saints have the best schedule remaining in terms of the easiest schedule, the most navigational schedule. Would you agree with that?
I agree with you on paper. The fact is that there has been no consistency. So while you look at that schedule and think that should be at least 3 out of 4 wins for the Saints, every one of them kind of gives you pause as to which Saints team is going to show up. If the team that played yesterday or the team that played Green Bay is the team that'll be on the field, they could win all 4. But if we look at the way that they played against some of these other teams throughout the season, it could be a long home stretch.
Well, I think it's certainly a 2-team race, and the fact that the Saints have succeeded on the road the last 2 games certainly must give Who Dat Nation hope. Okay, if the opposite had occurred here, if they lose yesterday, then you're going, man, this team can't win at home, and it's now back to playing poorly on the road. So I think they've given reason to hope that their game is coming back together. I think they're going to play well against Carolina at home on Sunday.
Well, I mean, and just looking at Atlanta, what they got left, I don't see them beating Green Bay. So right there, that gives the Saints the best, because I feel like the Saints should win their next 4 games. And Atlanta should lose 1 or maybe 2 games. So just looking at the whole overall picture, the Saints got the best opportunity to go to the win the division.
It's important, and I know we've addressed it. I agree. I think the Saints are going to win the division. I think we probably all do. But it's how you're playing football. You don't want to limp into the postseason. You want to be, at a high so you can carry over. And that, to me, is more important. Of course, you got to win it. But you got to be playing good football, too. I don't want to see them back in because that doesn't bode well. Just doesn't.
Well, and the other thing is the pride issue and whether or not you even feel worthy of being in with a losing record. So, Amy, if you win 3 out of 4, you're at least at 500, which is respectable. And if you somehow can win them all, now all of a sudden you've got a case for being in the playoffs and maybe even being a dark horse.
We saw what that dark horse does a few years ago when we had to go to Seattle and lost. So, it goes without saying that regardless of what their record is going in, I think that the Saints will be a team that people will worry about. It doesn't matter what their record is because of how they've played against some very good teams this year. Green Bay, we keep going back to that, but the Green Bay and then this Pittsburgh game certainly attest to the fact that they can play with anybody in the NFL. It just is what Saints team shows up on any given Sunday.
And if the Saints win the division, Brian, it's not inconceivable that we would have at least 2 coaching changes in this division after this season ends.
Absolutely, and I'll tell you what, we've seen, and I'll tell you what, if Atlanta would go in the tank, you might see 3. Kenny, I assume that you're talking about Ron Rivera in Carolina and Lovie Smith in Tampa. And if Atlanta would go south over this next month, you might see 3.
I think it's more likely to be Carolina and Atlanta changing because Tampa's a first-year coach. But again, the expectations there have to be higher than what they've seen to this point because clearly the Buccaneers are in a bad way. And we'd like to salute our good and great friends at Premier Automotive once again for their continuing support and for doing everything imaginable. We thank them for being with us and being part of the show. It is time now for our Sports NOLA trivia question of the evening. And as we take a look at our sportsNOLA.com trivia question, here's what Lenny cooked up today. In Sunday's win at Pittsburgh, Drew Brees, that's Brees, had the 10th game in Saints history of 5 or more touchdown passes. Who were the first Saints quarterbacks to throw for at least 5 touchdowns in a game? Aaron Brooks, Bobby Hebert, Billy Kilmer, or Archie Manning? I know the answer. We're back with the answer in just a moment. Think about it. See if you've got it as well. We'll unveil it when we continue with our Hot Seat segment and Ray Rice as Sports NOLA TV continues. Our sportsNOLA.com trivia question of the evening surrounds touchdown passes. Who was the first Saints quarterback to throw at least 5 touchdowns in a game? Was it Aaron Brooks, Bobby Hebert, Billy Kilmer, or Archie Manning? The answer is C. Billy Kilmer threw for 6 touchdowns in a 51-42 win at Busch Stadium, St. Louis, against the Cardinals of St. Louis in 1969. Al Dodd, Danny Abramowitz, Dave Parks, among those on the receiving end of those Kilmer touchdown passes. Way to go, Billy Kilmer. There's your answer. That's your trivia, brought to you by sportsNOLA.com. Ken Trahan with you. It's time now for our Hot Seat segment where we put Brian Alley Walsh on the hot seat with a hot topic of the day. It's a topic of discussion nationwide. Who's going to do it? Who's going to pull the trigger? Could it be the New Orleans Saints? Should the New Orleans Saints consider signing Ray Rice? Brian, the floor is yours.
As always, thank you, Doctor. I think the Saints would not be doing their job if they didn't at least research or explore Ray Rice, what he could mean to their team as we go forward. I would certainly look at it as a short-term interim basis. You fill out the season, and I'm sure that's the way most teams are going to be looking at Ray Rice if he does come back in the league. With regards to the Saints and the splash, the rumors, is that, you know what, it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't explore that possibility of bringing Ray Rice into the fold. But I don't think he'd be a good fit, and I'm sure Sean Payton feels that way as well. And here's a couple reasons why. Is normally when you bring in a Ray Rice, you've got an injury situation at that position. You've got one player that's going to make a difference, and your team is close enough to the Super Bowl, you think one guy could make a difference. Ray Rice and the New Orleans Saints are not a good fit. They're going to get Kyrie Robinson back this week. It's going to give them a full complement of running backs. And they don't need a distraction. Ray Rice deserves to be back in the league. He's earned it by our judicial system. That said, they don't need that distraction here, and it's not going to happen. So move on.
Amy?
No, he does not need to be in New Orleans for a simple fact. When somebody's off-field issues overshadow what they do on the field, it becomes, as Brian said, a distraction that a team, especially one as the New Orleans Saints right now, does not need. Aside from that, the off-field distraction that we're talking about is something that, regardless of what the situation is in terms of the court of law and the fact that his wife has forgiven him, the fact is that this is a guy that there is video evidence of him knocking a woman out. And maybe being the only woman on this panel, I tend to take that a little bit harder maybe than anyone else would. I hope not, and actually I think I'm speaking out of turn to what you guys really feel. But my point being is that what it is that he's dealing with, of what it is that created this entire maelstrom for him, is something that you cannot bring into a team without it overshadowing anything. And you talk about, is it a good team close to a Super Bowl? And bringing in someone like a Ray Rice with the team that would be on the precipice of something that great, to me, almost implodes it, because what he is doing in his situation is bigger than what happens on the field. And at this particular juncture, I think any team that brings in someone of a Ray Rice stature is basically saying that they are willing to have one person be bigger than that organization. So for many reasons, I think that no, he's not a good fit. The Saints, as you said, move on, make it a done deal.
Ricky?
Well, just looking at it, the Saints don't need him. We got Pierre, can do anything that Ray Rice can do to me, and you got a great young back in Mark Higgins. So you're only going to use the two backs that they have. They don't have enough room for another back. But he have been to all the system. He done got himself together. He done paid his penalty, and he done been awarded to come back and play. Our system, and that's the only thing you can do. He done served his time, he done got his sentence, and now he's able to play. Somebody might pick him up, but the Saints don't need him, and I don't think he's a great fit for the Saints. I don't think they never even looked at him. You get a lot of those reports saying that this team, that team. Well, I guarantee you the Saints weren't one of the teams that really looked at him.
I agree with both you folks. And Amy, you bring up a good point. My initial comments are strictly football related, but from that standpoint is that if you have an organization that feels as strongly as you just said, then all power to them. If you don't want that kind of player / person in your organization, then you know what? It's your organization, it's your decision, and I believe that there's probably a number of organizations that wouldn't even consider. That said, I agree with Ricky. He has paid his penance, and he sounds like a remorseful man. We all make mistakes. Unfortunately, this is a bad mistake, but from a football standpoint, I think he can still play in the league. I think he can still help a team, but he just doesn't fit in New Orleans right at this moment.
Well, these are all interesting topics in terms of how you discuss the issue, and obviously I think most of what you said is pretty much on point. He's not coming here. It's that simple, because when you look at what the Saints have, they don't need him first and foremost. And when you look at Ray Rice, look, he's a proven player, good player, 92 games over the course of his career, 3-time Pro Bowl player, Super Bowl champion. But here's what sticks out in my mind. He might be a descending player, as Ricky alluded to. This is a guy that averaged 3.1 yards per carry in 2013. That's not going to get it done. And you don't just have Mark Ingram and Pierre Thomas, you have Kyrie Robinson, and for that matter, Travaris Cadet. I don't see any fit here on a professional level. Now, you would like to upgrade your ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. Saints have lost that dynamic in dramatic fashion without Darren Sproles. Travaris Cadet is not that guy. And Ray Rice has 359 catches, over 3,000 yards, 6 touchdowns in his career. Oh, by the way, his best game ever was against the New Orleans Saints in 2010, 233 all-purpose yards in a game at Baltimore. He was the AFC Offensive Player of the Week, so there's a long memory there from the standpoint of Sean Payton and his staff with the Saints. But here's the bottom line. A, they don't need him. B, they certainly don't need the distraction, and C, they like to control the message as much as any organization in this league, and you're not going to control it when you bring a guy like that in because he is a significant distraction, regardless of what you think about him. I not only don't condone what he did, I despise what he did. And I understand forgiveness, and I'm all for it, and I'm prepared to forgive. I'm just not ready to see him be a saint. I don't see that that is going to be a fit that's going to help this football team on the field and off the field when you consider everything that goes along with it. So I really think it's a moot point. I'd be shocked if it was even a consideration at this point. Will the guy get another job in the NFL? I suspect he will. All it takes is one to take a look. Now, if you ask me about Adrian Peterson, might be a different answer because of the quality of the player and because of the offense, depending on your point of view. But that's another story for another day. When we return in just a moment, we'll take a look at college football, a win for LSU, and more as sportsNOLAtv continues. Premier Automotive Group is making a difference in our community. Troy and Tracy Duhon founded Giving Hope NOLA to serve those in need in the greater New Orleans area. Giving Hope NOLA operates the food pantry of New Orleans, which has fed thousands of people hot meals since it opened in 2013. We specifically target both children and the elderly in New Orleans East. Giving Hope NOLA and Premier Automotive is making a difference. Learn more by visiting givinghope-nola.org. Ken Trahan, sportsNOLAtv. The LSU Tigers get to 8 wins as they go to College Station and defeat the Aggies of Texas A&M 23-17. They had to sweat it out at the end, and yet they were clearly the better side and clearly the dominant team throughout because clearly they ran the ball so well, Amy. Leonard Fournette with a play that will be shown a million times again and again.
And I could watch it a million times again and again. When he lowers that shoulder, just what an impressive run that was. But LSU, we talked about it last week, needed to go into College Station. They needed the win. They needed an 8-win season, I really believe, to help recruiting. Now, let's go out and get the right kind of quarterback that fits into the offense that LSU plays. Because as we've talked about ad nauseum, neither one of the quarterbacks that they have right now is working or is going to be the quarterback of the future.
Speedy Noel catching a touchdown pass against his hometown team from Endicott High School, but LSU's defense by and large was really good in this game, Brian.
Yes, and I think they got a little luck on their side in that last play. The guy looked like he was in the neutral zone on that last play, but when Anthony Jennings, look at this. Look, I mean, come on. Okay, that is called 99.9% of the time. That said, LSU deserved to win the game. They should have won it by more. When you rush for 384 yards, okay, against an SEC team, those are the things that stick out in my mind. Anthony Jennings, Leonard Fournette and Speedy Noel, and Duke Riley. Kenny, when you look at those 3 players, they're from the city, and they represent this city high school football just tremendously.
Ricky, obviously a good win for LSU, and still the concerns about quarterback play overall. I like the fact they ran Anthony Jennings more. It's really what he does well, but still, looking ahead the next year, they've got to be better at that position.
Well, I mean, you got to go out and recruit 2 good quarterbacks. I mean, you're going to go in to parents and you're going to tell them that your son going to start from it. But whatever you do, you got to go out and get 2 good quarterbacks. You got to get a running quarterback and a passing quarterback. And that's what LSU been missing for the last couple of years. I mean, last year the quarterback was pretty good. He got drafted. You see what he's doing in the pros. So that's what they need.
Well, they're going to have to get a junior college kid. They're going to bring a kid who's seasoned enough that they could at least let him compete in the spring or in the fall, and hopefully they're going to give him the ball, and he's going to be the guy to take them forward.
And then get a high school quarterback, to learn from him. Sure. So that's what they need, Brian. They need to stack it up with about 3 good quarterbacks.
LSU now 3-0 against Kevin Sumlin since he's been at Texas A&M. That's been a good tonic for LSU to be able to beat them even when they had Johnny Manziel. So as a result, 8-4, and up next, Amy, I guess it's just waiting to see where they're going in terms of a bowl game. Maybe Houston, perhaps. where they started their season, ironically, against Wisconsin. We'll see. Maybe Jacksonville. There's a couple of different possibilities here.
Well, whatever game it is that the Tigers end up in, they've got to win it. I really am standing strong on the point that LSU finishing strong is absolutely tantamount to them having a good recruiting time in the offseason. And I think that that's absolutely critical. Certainly the running game is there. We all look forward to what Leonard Fournette is going to do over the next couple of years. But aside from that, LSU is still in that period of trying to reload. They've lost a lot to the NFL over the last few seasons. We need to make sure, especially considering coming off of really kind of a subpar season, if you will, for LSU, that they don't repeat it. We want to see a team improving. Saying that they're young or that they're rebuilding is not going to last any longer than one season.
Conference championship games are on the horizon now. A lot of those will be decided this week. And as we take a look at some of the conference championship games of note, Oregon-Arizona rematch game. Arizona's the one that's beaten Oregon twice in a row. They can't beat them. They beat everybody else. Bowling Green, Northern Illinois. I know Brian's excited about that. In the SEC, of course, it's Alabama and Missouri. ACC, Florida State, Georgia Tech. Ohio State lost another quarterback. They get Wisconsin, who started the season with LSU. Marshall and guess who? The Bulldogs of Louisiana Tech in Conference USA Mountain West. Fresno State at 6-6, playing for a conference title against Boise State. And some interesting games, some maybe not so interesting, Amy.
I think the one that most people are going to be looking at is what happens with Florida State and Georgia Tech. And I think really that's more of the general population outside of anybody that's around the area of where Florida State is wants to see Florida State lose. If for nothing else, the unbelievable, I don't want to call it backlash, but rather the amount of people that pull against Jameis Winston doing well is crazy.
Yeah, well, we're looking, Brian, at now a situation where the SEC championship, Alabama, Missouri. Alabama wins, they're in. They're going to be the #1 team. If they lose, they might still be in, depending on what happens. Florida State, believe it or not, I think they have to win because they're not respected by the people in this voting process. Oregon, well, I mean, listen, I think they have to win too. If they lose to the same team twice in the same season, how do you put them in? So then it becomes a mad scramble as to who gets in. TCU, Baylor, maybe they both move up. Who would have thought that you might have two teams from that league make it into the playoffs?
And Kenny, I'm going to go look at the Big Ten championship, Ohio State and Wisconsin. Like you mentioned earlier, Ohio State will be on its third quarterback. Kid's a good player. He just hasn't played at this level. But what do? Ohio State wins. They could make a good argument that they should be that fourth team in. But they would be going in with a quarterback who is unproven, a weak link, probably. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm really interested to see who wins that fourth spot.
Would the voting committee hold it against Ohio State, Ricky, for losing their second quarterback and being on their third string guy?
Yeah, I mean, if Ohio State don't win, they won't get in.
No.
But I look at it this week that two of those teams I looked at lose. I don't know which two, but Florida State got a hard game. Wisconsin got a chance to beat Ohio State. I think Alabama will take care of business. I mean,
Mississippi State spit the bit, Amy. They had their chance, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that at this point, it's Alabama's to lose the whole way through. I really do. I think they're in the driver's seat.
Right.
It's pretty interesting. The Iron Bowl always does something, Brian. This time it got Auburn's defensive coordinator fired.
I'll tell you what, and here's Auburn. They're sitting on a wonderful season up until about 5 weeks ago, and it's just went south. But you know what? I'm watching the Iron Bowl, Kenny. I never felt that Alabama was going to lose that game. It was a matter of them just finding themselves. And I'll tell you what, Blake Sims, when he plays well, that is the best team in the country.
Well, he showed me something coming back from those
sure
early
did.
interceptions and playing as well as he did after that, because a lot of other quarterbacks may have folded in that same circumstance. Tulane, of course, had the week off. Green Wave closed out their season against Temple at Yulman Stadium at 6:30 p.m. Saturday night. When we return, high school football and some state championships as we continue with Sports NOLA TV. sportsNOLA.com is the best site on the web. Louisiana Sports 24/7, your home for prep athletics. sportsNOLA.com has it all. You can even read Brian Alley Walsh there. Oh boy, make sure you do. It's actually good. And sportsNOLA.com is great. Thanks to the great contributors from all over the state. sportsNOLA.com, best site on the web. Ken Trahan, Sports NOLA TV continuing, and high school football continues. It's that exciting time of the year. And this past week, we had some very good performances, but we've chosen as our prep player of the week for sportsNOLA.com, the Greater New Orleans Quarterback Club, WHNO TV, and WGSO Radio, senior running back Will Matthews of Destrehan High School. Matthews with 28 carries, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, as the Wildcats overcame their arch rival Hahnville for a second time this year, beating them 24-12 to advance to the 5A semifinals against West Monroe. Congratulations to Will Matthews. You'll be honored at the year-end meeting of the Greater New Orleans Quarterback Club on December 15th at the Cannery on Toulouse Street, and Ricky Jackson says he'll be there. So we look forward to that. And speaking of high school football, it's time for state championships to be decided, at least on the select side. And this weekend, 4 games, and they're all going to be played on Friday. And check out the start time. 10 a.m. for a state championship game on a weekday, on a Friday. That's preposterous, and it's really a shame for Ouachita Christian coming down from the Monroe area to take on Southern Lab from Baton Rouge. And then at 1:30, hardly better, 2 great teams, Calvary Baptist and Catholic New Iberia, in a terrific matchup. Last year, Calvary beat them 34-33 in the semifinals. Division II, another great matchup. Rematch game, Parkview Baptist and U High from Baton Rouge, University in the Dome a year ago. Parkview Baptist always there. And then in Division I at 8:30, Jesuit, after upsetting Rummel, defeating the Raiders, they take on John Curtis in the Superdome, and we'll have that broadcast on WGSO 990 AM this coming Friday night. Now, as we look at the rest of the slate, the semifinals on the non-select side, Destrehan, as we just mentioned, hosting West Monroe, a rematch of the 2008 5A state championship game won by the Wildcats. Class 4A, we've got a couple of teams of interest in this one. Plaquemine, the #1 seed, playing at the Eagles of Warren Easton at Pan American Stadium. And Franklinton has the unenviable task of making a long trip to Neville, the 2nd seed, and the team that I picked to win it. 3A, North Webster, off of a wild win over Patterson, is at a meet to take on the Warriors. And in 1A, Kentwood makes the trip to Mangum, tough test, and West St. John, an even longer trip to Haynesville. So some outstanding matchups. Looking ahead, Amy, what do you like there? You see anything that you like in particular?
I really am looking forward to what happens in that John Curtis Jesuit game. I know a lot of people wanted to see Rummel in that championship game against them, but hats off to the Blue Jays, who have had a really great run in the playoffs to get to that championship game. And also, being that they're from the area where I'm from, I'm anxious to see what Catholic New Iberia does in this championship game.
Well, they're a great quarterback, and he's 6'4", can really play. They run the wing tee. They're very good, right?
Kenny, I echo what you said. It's a shame that you've got 2 games that are going to, 3 games, two games that are going to start on a Friday during business hours. But the other thing I noticed in the non-select, did you notice that there's no 1-2, 1-3 games? They're all craziness, and I think it just speaks to the whole system, the way it's set up.
I agree 100%. If you had everybody together, I think you'd see more chalk there and more according to form. Ricky?
Well, I mean, you know, Destrehan going to have a great game, and that's one that you can look at. That's going to be big boy football considered high school. But, you know, getting up 9 o'clock to play football, I'll tell you what, man, at that age, you get up and play anytime.
Well, you know, Ken, but you're right about that.
You didn't worry about what time you get up.
I'm sure the fan base, Ricky, will. But is that the way you really want to showcase your championship games? That's my point.
The answer is no. It's
no,
garbage.
I know it is.
It's pathetic.
Yeah.
You got a school in Ouachita Christian located in the Monroe area. You have to give up 2 days of school.
Right.
People have to take off of work just to come watch a 10 a.m. game for a state championship. I don't care how you feel about private and public in this split. I think it stinks, and I can't stand the system, and I've been very outspoken about it. But to make these kids play at 10 in the morning when they've earned the right to play for a state championship is absolutely preposterous. It's degrading. And you've got state semifinal games going on at the same time all over the state, which draws attention away from championships. It's just not the way it's supposed to be.
No.
And how they could allow this to get to this stage is beyond me. Change needs to be made in a huge way on many, many fronts.
And Kenny, and they need to do it immediately.
Yeah, immediately. When we return in just a moment, we'll talk about the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers as Sports NOLA TV continues on WHNO. Sports NOLA TV is brought to you by Premier Automotive, where 100% satisfaction is their goal. Premier is proud to offer their exclusive warranty for life, as well as a money-back guarantee on new and pre-owned vehicles. At Premier, we believe that our people, plus the right attitude, will result in the best automotive buying experience for you. Visit a Premier dealer near you. Check out all of Premier's great deals at premierautomotive.com. It's a rematch game. The Saints and the Panthers. First time around, the Saints won in Charlotte in pretty convincing fashion. And Amy, the Panthers have shown no signs of life in recent weeks. This sets up as a good matchup for the Saints at home, doesn't it?
Again, on paper, this looks like the Saints should win this football game. And assuming that the Saints continue to play well, and even though they did have the loss the week before, they have played well, better at least, the last couple of weeks. If they're able to put that together, especially considering Carolina is coming in and just a struggling football team, the Saints should win, but more importantly than that, the Saints need to win. They need to take a team that is not as good as they are and win convincingly.
Kenny, I'm going to use a boxing analogy. Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies. Is that Carolina is reeling. They're against the ropes. You know what? But you want to make sure that you throw that knockout punch early. Don't let a bad team hang around, because we've seen what happens.
Well, I mean, the quarterback for Carolina this year, he had injury prone and hurt him with his ribs and different stuff. There's a whole lot of talk, but he haven't looked good this year, and that's been a killer. He haven't did God, and the team usually follow the quarterback. They lost Steve Smith, so I think this is the worst team that they had. So I think the Saints should take this game pretty good.
Well, you just look at where they were last year compared to this year. Left tackle gone, Brandon LaFell gone, and by the way, being very productive, Steve Smith gone. We know what he's all about. And then Greg Hardy, of course, suspended. So they've had enormous losses, and they haven't replaced any of those guys, not one of them. And then the quarterback with a lesser supporting cast has really been poor. His percentage of completions is poor, turnover ratio is poor, scatter shot all over the field. Is he capable of big things? Yes, but we haven't seen that with any degree of consistency. So the numbers reflecting the Saints have been good against the Panthers at home in recent times, and I expect that will be the case again. Been wrong before, but got to believe with a sense of urgency and at this stage of the season, the Saints will get it done at home and end that home losing streak. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Amy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Brian, always.
Kenny.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Ricky.
Thank you, Doctor.
Keep on trucking, brother. It's calling me doctor now, too.
Now, doctor,
This
huh?
is an epidemic. What can I tell you? I've got no cure for it either. For all of our crew and our panel, I'm Ken Trahan. Thanks for joining us, and be a good sport. God bless you all. We are rounding third and heading home. So long.